It was another 3-0 week for the AFC North, meaning that a team in this division has not lost a game since week 5, and so far the AFC North is the only division to have every team either at 500 or above 500 right now as we enter week 8. And since every team that played won and the only team that didn't play was already at the bottom of the standings, the overall standings in the division remain the same, but the outlooks can still change, starting with the Baltimore Ravens, 5-2 overall now, still 2-1 in the division. Ravens getting a blowout win over the Lions, 38-6, and those 6 points for Detroit coming in the fourth quarter when the game was well over by then. The game was over really at halftime, 28-0. Usually I'll devote a little bit of time to how the game went, but on this one, I'm not really quite sure what to specifically say other than Baltimore kicked ass on Sunday. It was a statement win for sure for the Ravens. I definitely would have thought this would have been a pretty good game going into it with the two North divisional leaders. The Ravens defense was its usual self. It's safe to say at this point they are definitely a top unit in the NFL, as the AFC North home to a few top units in the NFL as far as defensive fronts go. But I was most impressed with the offense for this one. Lamar Jackson has looked definitely worthy of that extension more than he hasn't this season. He's definitely playing his way into MVP conversations. The additions at wide receiver starting to really become more noticeable for Baltimore after they dealt with some early season injuries. Zay Flowers has been a big revelation for them. The run game should always be dangerous and effective when Lamar Jackson is always a threat with his legs at the quarterback position. And as if things couldn't get any better for the Ravens, they're playing the Cardinals this week, and that should be an automatic win. I know Arizona, they started the season being a bit of a scrappy underdog, and they got that win over the Cowboys, and Josh Dobbs was, playing admirably for the situation he was thrown into, and it was kind of, oh man, watch out for the feisty Cardinals. That talk at the beginning of the season has died down a little bit. The Ravens should win this battle of the birds, no questions asked, and the Ravens should be holding on to the division lead for at least another week. And if they lose to Arizona and they lose that division lead, then we'll start to have a chat about how about this team going from a really hot performance against Detroit to whatever against Arizona. But again, if you're a Ravens fan, I'm not saying that they will lose. I'm expecting the Ravens to pull out a similar dominant win against the Arizona Cardinals this week. Then you have the Steelers, 4-2 overall, 2-0 still in the division. They get a comeback win over the Rams in LA, 24-17, the final score there. The win does come with a little bit of controversy, but honestly, the only thing that matters for the Steelers is that they got the W. Another strange game, but they've shown something over this season, this Pittsburgh Steelers team has, and it's that if you let them stay in a game, they will find a way to make you pay for it. The two games that they've lost have both been blowouts. The 49ers and the Texans early in the year, they gave them no shot to win from the get-go, and the majority for Pittsburgh's wins have come from just, the Steelers hanging around for just long enough to do exactly what they need to do, especially as far as getting those opportunities on offense and having that defense. If the defense can keep the score low, then Pittsburgh always has a decent chance to try to get some spark in that offense to come back and score some points. TJ Watt getting an interception on Matt Stafford to start the second half definitely helps them. TJ Watt, game changer, vital to the whole team, not just the defense. I know that's kind of a water is wet and grass is green statement, but I do feel like it can't be overstated how important TJ Watt is to this team. Guys is a complete game wrecker when he's on, and he's pretty much almost always on his game. Joey Porter Jr. has also, for the defense, progressed nicely this year for Pittsburgh in the defensive backfield. Definitely doing a lot of good things there. Jalen Warren on the offensive side, Jalen Warren and Najee Harris, they were able to find the end zone in the second half. There's been a lot of talk about who's better between Warren and Harris, but in games like these where they're both putting in solid efforts, it's not really going to matter who is going to be the 1A or the 1B in this case. Kenny Pickett showing once again that he can be dangerous once he gets into a rhythm with Deontay Johnson and George Pickens, though if those connections can hang on and they get Pat Freiermuth to come back eventually, that could definitely help the Steelers and help that offense click even more consistently. I feel like with Matt Canada still the offensive coordinator, there's always going to be consistency issues. But again, if the defense can keep them in games, this Steelers offense does have enough weapons and the skills to put up points if they absolutely need to every once in a while. The controversy at the end of the game, Steelers ended up winning the game after a quarterback sneak on a 4th and 1 was ruled successful. The only problem is Kenny Pickett was obviously down before he crossed the line. If it was ruled short, the Rams would have had one last chance to try to tie the game, and who knows from there. They didn't call it as a reviewable play. Sean McVay had no timeouts in order to make a challenge, and it was just before the 2-minute warning before those kinds of calls automatically go up into the booth for the booth review. But in my opinion, even if the ruling was overturned, the Rams still would have had to have scored a touchdown on a defense that, they'd played pretty solid to that point, especially in the second half. There is no guarantee that Rams offense would have been able to get themselves into the end zone. I think overall, the Steelers, I don't think Steelers fans should feel bad about the win. They should take a win however they can get it, just like any NFL team, any NFL fan base is going to take a W pretty much any way they can. And they play at home against the Jaguars this week. So the Jaguars are definitely a bit of a step up from the Rams, at least in my opinion, as far as overall record and the overall feel for what this Jags team could be heading into the middle of the season here. But the Steelers have shown, again, they can definitely, if they can hang around in a game, they can hang with just about anybody and win and beat them at the end. Then you have the Browns improving to 4-2 overall, still 1-2 in the AFC North. They win an even wilder game that they won last week against the 49ers, 39-38 final score at home against the Colts. That game had its own officiating issues, as I talked about when I discussed the game on Monday when I made my video on it. You have Jim Irsay tweeting out that the NFL admitting that they made some bad calls to end the game. Not really sure if the NFL is going to officially acknowledge that, or if that's just more Jim Irsay shenanigans. But either way, again, I wouldn't blame Colts fans if they felt a little bit miffed after some of those calls against the Browns last week. Myles Garrett, though, he was in full Jurassic Miles mode. He was the AFC Defensive Player of the Week this week. 2 strip sacks that eventually led to touchdowns, 9 total tackles, and an insane blocked field goal where he just jumps over the Colts line from a standstill without making contact, without drawing a penalty on himself, giving himself a clear lane to block a kick. And speaking of field goals, Dustin Hopkins was, in my opinion, just as crucial to the win as Myles Garrett was, making 3 50-plus yarders, 4 for 4 overall on field goals on the day, becoming the first NFL kicker to make a 50-plus yarder in 5 consecutive games, making those high-pressure kicks in Cleveland, not easy to do for kickers, and he's the AFC Special Teams Player of the Week for the second week in a row now. The defense overall was up and down. They did force some game-changing turnovers like Myles Garrett with those strip sacks, Denzel Ward with a nice interception, but also they allowed some long drives, some big play touchdowns, and 2 Minshew Mania rushing touchdowns. Gardner Minshew looked really good for the Colts. Josh Downs was an issue for Cleveland's defense, and Jonathan Taylor, I thought, had a pretty respectively productive day in his own right. But the biggest drama for Cleveland coming out of this one is at the quarterback position. So Deshaun Watson is bad, and then he gets hurt. He gets checked for a concussion. He is cleared from that, but PJ Walker stayed out on the field. And look, the team can say what they want about wanting to make sure he's not going to get injured anymore. But honestly, they found an excuse to bench him, and then they did it because it was the right thing to do. Deshaun Watson was awful when he got out there against the Colts. He didn't do his talk with the media today, which is what he did before the 49ers game when it was revealed that he wouldn't be starting. And it's been confirmed that PJ Walker will be starting this game again, and Deshaun Watson will not play. Cleveland dealing with even more quarterback drama as they prepare to face the Seahawks in Seattle this week. When Deshaun Watson will ever be fully healthy or fully good to go, or both, whatever, that nobody has any idea when that will ever be. If it will ever be this season, if it will ever be within this contract length for Deshaun Watson. It seems like the Browns' soap opera at quarterback will continue. Then you get to the Bengals, still in the basement, 3-3 overall, 0-2 in the division. Their record does not change as they are coming off of their bye week. They were going to be at the bottom regardless of the results, but this was the worst case scenario for Cincinnati, at least coming out of this week with all 3 other teams winning. That means the Bengals are going to have to start making up some wins, and for them, ideally, that would start this week in San Francisco. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I would have said that, Cincinnati is screwed. Get ready for a long game. They're going to have to really pick some things up, but tides have turned a little bit, as the 49ers in back-to-back weeks have now lost to the P.J. Walker-led Nick Chubb-less Cleveland Browns and the Justin Jefferson-less Minnesota Vikings. And they're coming off of, they're going to have a day's less of rest because they played on the Monday night game last week. The offense for the 49ers just haven't shown the same spark as in the last couple of weeks, and the Bengals, they have won a couple of games off of the backs of their defense. The offensive line for Cincinnati definitely has a challenge in front of them. They've been a little inconsistent trying to hold off Nick Bosa and the 49ers defensive line. I'm not necessarily sure if I would qualify this as a must-win game for Cincinnati, as 3-4. While it isn't ideal and you'd rather win the game to go above 500, it wouldn't necessarily be a death knell. That's still a record that you can, if you string together a really good stretch of play, that you can come back and win from. But falling down under 500 and putting yourself that far down, not only in the division of the AFC North, but just in general in the AFC standings, if you're trying to hope for more of a wild card position as you head into the playoffs, that's going to make those must-win scenarios start to occur much sooner than you'd hope for, especially with the expectations that the Bengals went into with this season. But that's pretty much it for the AFC North. Another undefeated week for the division. You can let me know in the comments if you think they're going to pull that off again. That's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you didn't make it this far into it, leave a like and a subscribe if you enjoyed the video and you'd like to see more like it. Thank you once again for watching. I will see you at the next one.